Welcome back to episode 5 of the Daniel Smith Color Showdown. In this episode, we're going to be comparing two Perylene colors. One is the Perylene Maroon by Daniel Smith, and the other is Perylene Violet by Daniel Smith. Now, they're both single pigment colors and they're both series 3, so quite pricey. And I chose these two colors because I would like to learn a lot more about the Perylene colors and all those a little bit more muted yet still very rich and beautiful colors. I'm sure for some people these two are not comparable and it'll be like comparing apples and oranges and love having both of them on their palette. Personally, for me, because I already have a pretty full palette as it is, it will probably be either or. However, I want to do this episode to see if they are both so very different and so very beautiful to the point of justifying having both of them on people's palettes. So let's take a closer look at each one of these colors, see how they mix with other colors on my palette, because that will be really interesting and useful for me personally, and hopefully gives you a general idea of how they behave around the color wheel for you as well. First up is Perylene Maroon by Daniel Smith, and this is made by the pigment PR179, which slightly unhelpfully is called Perylene Maroon. The Perylene pigments were invented in the early 1900s, and they are very popular because they are very weather stable and heat stable, so they are quite popular in the automotive and fabric dyeing industries, as well as being loved by many watercolorists. Now, Jackson says that Perylene Maroon is a dark red-brown hue. This paint is semi-transparent and highly staining. Pleasing texture can be created when Perylene Maroon is used with a salt application. It is classified as excellent lightfast, semi-transparent, not granulating, and staining. Next up is the Perylene Violet, again by Daniel Smith, and this is a series 3 color, just like the Perylene Maroon, and it is made out of the pigment PV29, and again that basically means it is a Perylene Violet pigment. The pigment is actually called Perylene Violet. Jackson says that Perylene Violet is a deep, luscious, grape-juicy reddish violet. This neutral and natural looking product is well suited for portraits, landscape and shadow work. Ideal for placing next to complementary greens, this paint is also great for botanical pieces. It is classified as excellent light fastness, transparent, not granulating and medium staining. We are back and the paints have dried. I have to say I really like both of them. They're both surprisingly beautiful colors and I'm so glad I got to play with both of them. So let's take a closer look at both colors. This side is Perylene Maroon and this side is Perylene Violet. In terms of creating washes, they are both very good at creating smooth washes. Any of the dots you see here, the inconsistency in the wash was my fault because I splashed some water accidentally onto the Perylene Maroon. Both colors are very easy to really wet and incredibly highly tinted. So even though these are both series 3 paints and therefore a little bit more expensive than most of the other colors, I think you get your money's worth because you only use so little to get so much color onto your paper. It's the same story for all the other papers, the hot presses, the rough paper and the Archer's cold press. They all provide great washes. However, both Perylene colors are slightly prone to the cauliflowering or the backgrounding that happens if you add water to the paint. So you just have to be careful of that if you are using either of these colors for washes. They're both very beautiful colors. The Perylene Maroon is a more red color and it's reminiscent of something like the Indian red, whereas the Perylene Violet is cooler and with a hint of the violet in there. In terms of opacity, they are both pretty much the same. I would say they're quite transparent. in terms of lifting, they are both quite highly staining, and it takes quite a lot to get the color off the paper again, and I'm not sure if you can ever get the colors out properly. Certainly not by just wetting the surface and dabbing it off like I have been doing for the lifting tests. In terms of the glazing, they layer really well, and I experienced no lifting of the original layer when I put the new second glazing layer down, which is quite nice because paints that re-wet easily, as these two were, they can sometimes be quite difficult to glaze over the top because the original, the underneath layer will lift up quite easily, like in ultramarine blue. However, because they are both very staining colors, you can layer really easily, as well as still having that easy to re-wet thing going on. Now, since I moved this around, I just want to say that this is the Perylene Maroon and this is the Perylene Violet. These two are the gauzing test. With the Perylene Maroon, you don't get very defined lines. However, it is quite a nice pattern. So it does produce a very unique texture. For the Perylene Violet, you do get a lot more lines of it. So if you are looking for between these two for something that creates linear marks with the gauzing, then I recommend the Perylene Violet. Because Jackson's website said Perylene Maroon is quite interesting to play with salt, I thought I will do salt on both. I used two different types of salt for both. This is Perylene Maroon again, and this is Perylene Violet. Now this half and this half is with a more crystallized, bigger bits of salt. This half, the left half, is with just ordinary table salt. They both reacted very beautifully to salt. However, I think it's really interesting because the Perylene Maroon up here reacts in a way that you kind of expect with watercolor and adding salt in it. However, the Perylene Maroon, do you see this kind of seaweedy pattern? That to me is quite unusual. This is what you normally can expect, whereas this is more veiny. So for the salt effect, I think they're both certainly valid, and this is very unique and interesting indeed. In terms of how the two colors mixes with other colors around the color wheel, this side again is Perylene Maroon and this side is Perylene Violet. They both mix and play quite well with others. The Perylene Maroon gets neutralized more with the blues in your palette, and the Perylene Violet gets neutralized more around the yellow range of colors. One thing to note is this effect, which is very beautiful. It's the Perylene Maroon with the ultramarine blue, and what happens is that the ultramarine blue has sunk to the bottom of the paper while the Perylene Maroon has stayed on top, and they are very beautiful indeed. So I would say this is a very unique mix that is worth playing around with. Not the prettiest of colors, but very, very interesting textures. The Perylene Maroon neutralizes to this nice inky color with the phthalo turquoise, which I think is quite nice. My favorite in terms of the Perylene Violet and the other colors it mixes, I think it actually mixes quite nicely around about here with the phthalo blue, yellow shade, phthalo turquoise and hooker's green. I wouldn't particularly choose Perylene Violet as a mixing color. It's not like Undersea Green in episode 2 where it turns all the colors into really beautiful shades. So all in all, what do I think of these two colors? I really like them. I'm surprised at how much I like these colors because you know me, I usually really like really bright, intense colors, and I haven't really explored much in terms of these more muted, rich tones. The salting experiment was fascinating, particularly the Perylene Violet over here. In terms of which one would I pick for my palette, I am still struggling to pick this. I do have plans to add transparent red oxide to my new palette, so I'm slightly concerned that the Perylene Maroon might be too similar with that. However, it is a lovely, lovely color. And with the Perylene Violet, I really am curious about this salting texture. I think I'm gonna need to investigate and play around with the Perylene colors a bit more before I feel comfortable in picking one or the other, or the both, or none for my palette, just because I'm so unfamiliar with muted tones and how to include them in my art style. However, if you're a big fan of muted rich tones, then good luck to you, because I would find it very difficult to pick between these two colors, because they both have their own unique characteristics and they are both very, very beautiful colors. And I can totally understand if somebody has both of them on their palette. I think it would actually be nice to have a little palette area that is in the corner of my palette that is just made out of all the Perylene colors. Maybe I could even do a video on comparing all the Perylene colors. If you are interested in that, I can definitely start planning that video for you. So, which one would you pick? Would you pick the Perylene Maroon or the Perylene Violet, or both, or maybe none? Let me know down in the comments below. If you have any questions about the colors I covered in today's episode, then please let me know in the comments down below. If this video was interesting and useful to you, please give it a thumbs up, because that really helps the channel grow. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please go ahead and do so by hitting the subscribe button down here and the notification icon as well. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed seeing a comparison of these two colors, and I will see you in the next video.